The war had been going on for 7 years now, and everyone was tired of it. Admiral Rivers looked through the thick glass window of his ship at the enemy station floating in space. It looked like a giant metal flower with its sections spread out around the center. 3 months ago, his fleet had surrounded it completely. Nothing could get in or out. His communication officer, Hayes, walked over with a worried look on his face. "Sir, we have been listening to their messages again. The situation inside that station is getting worse every day." Rivers turned around. Hayes was young, maybe 25 years old, with short brown hair and honest eyes. He had joined the fleet only 2 years ago, right after the Catherians destroyed his home planet's main city. Like most of the crew, he had personal reasons to hate the enemy. "What are they saying now?" Rivers asked. Hayes handed him a small device that translated the alien language. "They are talking about food, sir. Or rather, the lack of it. Their main food machines broke down 2 weeks ago. They are running out of everything." Rivers took the device and listened. The voices sounded desperate. Even through the mechanical translation, he could hear them talking about children, about cubs that were crying because they were hungry. The adult Catherians were giving their own food to the young ones. "How many people are on that station?" Rivers asked. "About 3,000 adults, sir. But there are also many families. We count around 800 cubs, all very young." Rivers felt something twist in his stomach. Cubs. That was what the Catherians called their children. He had seen pictures of them in intelligence reports. They looked different from human children, with their scaled skin and large eyes, but they were still just kids. Dr. Watson, the fleet's intelligence officer, joined them. She was a small woman with gray hair who always carried a tablet full of information. "Admiral, I have been studying their communication patterns. The adults have not eaten anything for 5 days now. They are giving everything to their cubs, but even that is not enough." 5 days? Rivers repeated. "Yes, sir. And from what we can tell, the cubs are starting to show signs of serious hunger. Their body heat is dropping, which means they are getting weaker." Rivers walked back to the window. The enemy station looked peaceful from here, just a structure floating in the darkness of space. But inside, children were suffering. He thought about his own daughter, Amy. She would have been 12 years old now if she had lived. The Catherians had killed her 5 years ago during a raid on the colony where Rivers lived with his family. He remembered holding her small body after the attack, feeling her go cold in his arms. That was when he decided to join the military and fight back. That was when the war became personal for him. "Sir, we have new orders from Fleet Command," Hayes said, interrupting his thoughts. Rivers took the message and read it. The words were clear and direct. "Prepare for final assault. Destroy all enemy forces. No survivors." He stared at the message for a long time. No survivors? That meant the cubs too. The children who were already dying from hunger would be killed by his weapons instead. "When do they want us to attack?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning, sir. All ships are ready. We have enough firepower to destroy the station completely in less than an hour." Rivers nodded slowly. His crew was good, and they had been waiting for this moment for months. They were tired of sitting here watching and waiting. They wanted to go home to their families. They wanted to end this, but something felt wrong about it all. Dr. Watson showed him more information on her tablet. "Admiral, look at this. We have been monitoring the heat signatures inside the station. These small dots here are the cubs. See how they are all gathered in the center sections? The adults have moved them there to keep them safe and warm." Rivers looked at the dots on the screen. Each one represented a child, a young life that had never chosen to be part of this war. "They are protecting them," he said quietly. "Yes, sir. Just like we would protect our own children." That night, Rivers sat alone in his room. On his desk was a picture of Amy, smiling and holding a toy spaceship. Next to it was the attack plan for tomorrow. Everything was ready. His ships would fire their weapons, the station would explode, and the war in this sector would be over. He picked up the picture of his daughter. "What would you want me to do, Amy?" He whispered to the photo, but Amy could not answer. She had been gone for 5 years now, killed by the same species that he was about to destroy tomorrow, the same species whose children were now starving to death while their parents tried desperately to keep them alive. Rivers put down the picture and picked up his communication device. He could contact the enemy station if he wanted to. He could talk to their commander, General Voss, but what would he say? What could he say? He thought about the cubs again, innocent children who just wanted food and safety. Children who did not care about wars or politics or revenge. Children who were exactly like Amy had been. The Admiral made a decision that would change everything, but he would not act on it until morning. Tonight he would think about bottles instead of blades, about feeding hungry mouths instead of silencing them forever. Tomorrow would bring a choice that no military school had ever prepared him for. Tomorrow he would have to decide what it really meant to be human in a universe full of suffering. 5 years earlier, Rivers had been a different man. He worked as a mining engineer on the peaceful colony of New Haven, where he lived in a small house with his wife Sarah and their 7-year-old daughter Amy. Life was simple then. He would come home from work covered in dust, and Amy would run to hug him anyway, laughing when he pretended to be too dirty to touch her. Sarah would make dinner while Amy told him about her day at school. She was learning to read advanced books and loved stories about space explorers. "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to fly to all the stars," she would say, pointing out the window at the night sky. "Maybe we can go together," he would tell her, not knowing that their time was running short. The Catherian attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning. Rivers was deep underground in the mines when the alarm started screaming. By the time he reached the surface, their small town was already burning. The enemy ships had targeted the school first, then the hospital, then the homes where families lived. He found Sarah and Amy in the ruins of their house. They had tried to hide in the basement, but the building had collapsed on top of them. Sarah was already gone, but Amy was still breathing barely. She looked up at him with her big brown eyes and whispered, "Daddy, it hurts." Those were her last words. Rivers buried them both in the small cemetery behind the town. Most of the other graves were fresh too. The Catherians had killed 3,000 people that day, including 400 children from the school. When the rescue ships finally arrived, Rivers was one of only 50 survivors. That was when he joined the military. That was when he decided that every Catherian in the universe should pay for what they had done to his family. Now sitting in his ship 5 years later, Rivers tried to push those memories away. But they kept coming back, especially when he thought about the cubs on the enemy station. He wondered if their parents loved them the same way he had loved Amy. He wondered if they told them bedtime stories and helped them with their homework. Dr. Watson had given him files about Catherian family life. Despite being reptilian aliens with scales and claws, they raised their young with the same care that humans did. The cubs stayed close to their parents for the first 10 years of life, learning how to hunt and communicate and survive. They played games, learned songs, and even had favorite toys. In one intelligence photo, Rivers saw a Catherian parent teaching a small cub how to use tools. In another, a family was sitting together sharing a meal. The cubs were small and curious, reaching for everything with their tiny clawed hands. They looked different from human children, but the love in their parents' eyes was exactly the same. Lieutenant Cole knocked on his door and entered when Rivers called for him to come in. Cole was his aide, a smart young officer who handled communications and planning. He had been with Rivers for 2 years and was one of the few people who knew about Amy. "Sir, I have the latest reports from our sensors," Cole said. His voice was quiet, almost sad. "Tell me." "The cubs are getting weaker. Their body temperature has dropped another degree since yesterday. Dr. Watson estimates they have maybe 2 days left before they start dying from starvation." Rivers closed his eyes. 2 days. Less than 48 hours before children would start dying not from weapons but from simple hunger. "There is something else, sir," Cole continued. "We intercepted a personal message from General Voss to his second-in-command. He was talking about his own cub. She is only 3 years old and she stopped eating yesterday. He is scared, sir. Really scared. General Voss." Rivers knew that name well. He was the Catherian commander who had led the attack on New Haven 5 years ago. He was the one responsible for Amy's death. Rivers had dreamed of meeting him face to face, of making him pay for all the pain he had caused. But now Voss was just another parent watching his child suffer. "Sir," Fleet Command sent another message, Cole said. "They want confirmation that we will attack at dawn. They are getting pressure from the government to end this quickly." Rivers looked at the attack plan spread out on his desk. Everything was perfect. His ships were in position, his weapons were charged, and his crew was ready. One word from him and the station would be destroyed. Voss would die. All the Catherians would die. And so would their cubs, Cole. "Do you have any children?" Rivers asked. The lieutenant looked surprised by the question. "No, sir. But I have a little brother. He is 8 years old." Do you think about him when you are out here fighting? Yes, sir. Every day. I want to make the galaxy safe for him. Rivers nodded. That was exactly how he had felt after Amy died. Fight the enemy. Make them pay. Keep other children safe by destroying the threat. But what if the threat had children too? Sir, what are your orders for tomorrow? Cole asked. Rivers looked out the window at the enemy station again. Somewhere inside that metal structure, hundreds of cubs were crying because their stomachs hurt. Their parents were holding them, trying to comfort them, knowing that there was nothing they could do to help, just like he had held Amy in those final moments. I need more time to think, Rivers said finally. Cole looked confused but nodded and left the room. Rivers picked up Amy's picture again. In it, she was holding a bottle of juice, smiling because it was her favorite flavor. She had been such a happy child, always excited about simple things like new foods and interesting books. What would she think if she could see him now, preparing to kill other children because he was angry about her death? Would she want him to choose revenge, or would she want him to choose something else? The Admiral had less than 12 hours to decide. Dawn came too quickly. Rivers had not slept at all during the night. He stood in the main control room of his ship, watching as his officers prepared for the attack. Everyone moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and communication systems. All ships report ready, sir, Hayes announced. We can begin the assault on your command. Rivers looked around at his crew. These were good people who had lost friends and family to the Catherians. They trusted him to lead them, to make the hard decisions that would end this war and let them go home. They expected him to give the order that would destroy the enemy station. Instead, he surprised everyone. Stand down all weapons, Rivers said quietly. The control room became very quiet. Hayes looked confused. Sir, did you say stand down? Yes, cancel the attack. All ships are to power down their weapons and maintain defensive positions only. Dr. Watson stepped forward. Admiral, Fleet Command is expecting us to attack in 10 minutes. They have been very clear about their orders. I know what they ordered, Rivers replied, but I am changing those orders. Lieutenant Cole moved closer to him. Sir, what are you planning to do? Rivers took a deep breath. What he was about to do could end his career and possibly get him arrested for disobeying orders, but he had made his choice during the long, sleepless night. Open a communication channel to the Catherian station, he said. Everyone in the control room stared at him. Opening communications with the enemy during an active siege was against all military rules. But Hayes followed the order anyway, his fingers moving across the control panel. Channel open, sir, Hayes said. They are responding. A new voice filled the room, speaking in the harsh Catherian language. The translation device quickly converted it to English. Human fleet, this is General Voss. Are you calling to demand our surrender? Rivers had imagined this moment many times over the past 5 years. He had pictured himself face to face with the alien who had killed his daughter, telling him about all the pain he had caused before destroying him. But now that it was happening, all he could think about were the hungry cubs inside the station. General Voss, this is Admiral Rivers. I am calling to ask you a question. There was a long pause. What question? How many cubs are aboard your station? Another pause, even longer this time. Rivers could imagine the confusion and suspicion on the alien commander's face. Why would a human admiral ask about their children? Why do you want to know this? Voss asked finally. Please just answer the question. We have 340 cubs, all under 5 years old in your measurement system. Why does this matter to you? Rivers felt his heart beating faster. 340 children. All of them hungry, all of them scared, all of them innocent. General, our sensors show that your cubs are dying from starvation. Is this correct? The silence lasted almost a full minute. When Voss spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, more desperate. Yes, our food systems failed and we cannot repair them. We are giving what little we have to the cubs, but it is not enough. They are very weak. Rivers looked around at his crew. They were all listening carefully, trying to understand what their admiral was doing. Some looked angry, others confused. Dr. Watson was watching him with interest, as if she was starting to understand. General Voss, I am prepared to offer humanitarian aid for your cubs. The translation device struggled with Voss's response, which seemed to include several words that did not exist in English. Finally, it settled on, I do not understand your meaning. I want to send food and medical supplies to your station, only for the cubs, to keep them alive. The silence was so complete that Rivers could hear his own heartbeat. Everyone in the control room was staring at him as if he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. "This is a trick," Voss said finally. "You want us to lower our shield so you can attack. No trick. I will send unmanned supply ships that your sensors can scan completely. You can verify that they contain only food and medicine, no weapons. My ships will maintain their distance while the supplies are delivered. Why would you do this? We are enemies. You came here to destroy us." Rivers thought about Amy, about the picture on his desk, about all the pain he had carried for 5 years. He thought about the cubs he had never seen, crying from hunger inside the enemy station. "Because they are children," he said simply. Dr. Watson stepped forward and whispered, "Sir, this is brilliant. If we save their cubs, we might be able to negotiate a surrender without having to destroy the station." But Rivers was not thinking about strategy or surrender. He was thinking about bottles of nutrition formula and the chance to save lives instead of taking them. "I need an answer, General Voss. Will you accept aid for your cubs?" The alien commander was quiet for a long time. Rivers could hear other voices in the background, Cytherians arguing in their own language. Some seemed angry, others desperate. "My officers think this is a trap," Voss said eventually. "What do you think?" I think my daughter has not eaten in 2 days. She is so small and she keeps asking me why her stomach hurts. If there is any chance that you can help her, I must take that chance." Rivers felt something break inside his chest. The pain he had been carrying for 5 years seemed to shift, becoming something different. Not lighter, but changed. "Prepare your docking bay, General. We will begin loading supplies immediately." Hayes looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, what should I tell Fleet Command when they ask about the attack?" Rivers smiled for the first time in months. "Tell them we found a better way to win." The supply ship was small and moved slowly through space toward the Cytherian station. Rivers had insisted on piloting it himself despite the protests from his crew. Dr. Watson sat beside him, along with 2 medical officers and Lieutenant Cole. The back of the ship was filled with carefully prepared supplies. "I still think this is dangerous." "Sir?" Cole said as they approached the station's docking bay. "We don't know if they plan to take us prisoner." "They could have shot us down already if they wanted to," Rivers replied. "Besides, desperate parents don't usually harm people who are trying to help their children." Dr. Watson was checking the nutrition bottles they had prepared. Her medical team had worked all night to create food that would be safe for young Cytherians. They had used biological data captured during previous battles to make sure the formula would not make the cubs sick. "Each bottle contains enough nutrition for 1 cub for 3 days, she explained. "We brought 500 bottles plus basic medical supplies and some emergency food for the adults." The docking bay doors opened slowly, and Rivers guided the ship inside. As the doors closed behind them and air filled the space, he could see Cytherian soldiers waiting for them. They all carried weapons, but they were not pointing them at the ship. General Voss was easy to recognize. He was taller than the other Cytherians, with darker scales and scars on his arms from old battles. Rivers had studied pictures of him for years, imagining what he would say when they finally met. But now, seeing the worry and exhaustion on the alien's face, all thoughts of revenge seemed unimportant. Rivers opened the ship's door and stepped out. The Cytherian soldiers moved closer, their weapons ready but not aimed. Voss walked forward until he was only a few feet away from the human admiral. "So you are Rivers," Voss said in English. His voice was deep and rough. "The human who destroyed 3 of our battle fleets." "And you are Voss," Rivers replied. "The Cytherian who led the attack on New Haven." They stared at each other for a long moment. Both of them knew about the pain they had caused each other. Both had lost people they cared about in this war. "Where is your daughter?" Rivers asked. Voss looked surprised by the question. "She is in the nursery with the other cubs." "Why do you ask?" "Because I want to help her first." Dr. Watson and the medical officers began unloading the supplies. The Cytherian soldiers watched carefully, scanning each box and bottle with their equipment. Everything was exactly as Rivers had promised: food, medicine, and nothing else. Voss led them through the corridors of the station. Rivers noticed how quiet everything was. There were no sounds of normal activity, no voices or laughter. The only noise came from their footsteps on the metal floor. "Most of our people are sleeping," Voss explained. "It takes less energy that way. We have been rationing power as well as food. They passed several adult Catherians who watched the humans with curiosity and suspicion. These aliens looked very different from humans with their scaled skin and sharp claws, but Rivers could see the same exhaustion and worry that he had seen in human refugees during the war. The nursery was a large room filled with small beds and toys. Cubs of different ages were lying quietly, too weak to play. Some were sleeping, others were awake but barely moving. They all looked much too thin. Rivers had prepared himself for this moment, but seeing the hungry children still hit him hard. They reminded him of human children, the way they curled up when they were scared and reached out for their parents when they were hurt. "There she is," Voss said quietly, pointing to a small cub lying on a bed near the window. The little Catherian was smaller than Rivers had expected. Her scales were a lighter color than her father's, and her big eyes were closed as she slept. She was so thin that he could see her ribs under her skin. Dr. Watson opened one of the nutrition bottles and checked its temperature. "This should be ready to drink," she said, handing it to Rivers. Rivers knelt down next to the small bed. The cub opened her eyes and looked at him with curiosity instead of fear. She had never seen a human before, but she was too young to understand about wars and enemies. "Hello?" Rivers said softly. "Are you hungry?" The cub made a small noise and tried to sit up. Voss moved to help her, speaking to her in their own language. She looked from her father to Rivers, then at the bottle in the human's hands. "She wants to know if it tastes good," Voss translated. Rivers smiled. "Tell her it is the best flavor in the galaxy." The cub took the bottle with her small clawed hands and began to drink. Her eyes widened with surprise and happiness as the nutrition formula filled her empty stomach. She drank quickly, making small, satisfied sounds. Around the room, Dr. Watson and the medical officers were giving bottles to other cubs. Parents who had been watching suspiciously began to relax as they saw their children eating and getting stronger. Rivers stayed next to Voss's daughter until she finished the entire bottle. She looked up at him and made a sound that needed no translation. She was saying thank you. "Her name is Luna," Voss said. "It means little star in our language." "That is a beautiful name," Rivers replied. "I had a daughter once. Her name was Amy." Voss looked at him carefully. "What happened to her?" "She died in the attack on New Haven. She was 7 years old." The Catherian general was quiet for a long time. "I led that attack," he said finally. "I did not know there were so many children in that town." "I know," Rivers said. "I came here planning to kill you for what you did. But watching your daughter drink that bottle, all I can think about is how happy Amy would be to know that we saved Luna instead." Luna had fallen asleep again, but now she looked peaceful instead of pained. Her breathing was stronger and there was a little color in her scales. Voss touched his daughter's head gently. "You could have destroyed this station and killed us all. Why did you choose to save them instead?" Rivers looked around the nursery at all the cubs who were now drinking nutrition bottles and getting medical attention. Human soldiers were kneeling beside alien children, helping them eat and checking their health. A few months ago, these same soldiers had been shooting at Catherian ships. Now they were acting like parents and doctors. "Because someone had to choose mercy," Rivers said. "Someone had to decide that some things are more important than winning wars." For the first time since they had met, General Voss smiled. "Perhaps there is hope for both our species after all." News traveled fast in the age of instant communication across the galaxy. Within 12 hours of Rivers feeding the first Catherian cub, the story was being broadcast on every human news channel and transmitted through every military communication network. Fleet Command was furious. Admiral Burke, Rivers's superior officer, appeared on the communication screen with his face red with anger. He was calling from the military headquarters on Earth and his voice shook with rage. "Rivers, what in the hell do you think you are doing?" Burke shouted. "I ordered you to destroy that station, not turn it into a charity mission." Rivers sat calmly in his command chair, flanked by Dr. Watson and Lieutenant Cole. Behind them, the main screen showed the Catherian station, now with several human supply ships docked to its sides. "Sir, the situation has changed. We have achieved our strategic objective through alternative means." "Alternative means?" "You fed the enemy. You gave aid and comfort to the same aliens who have been killing our people for 7 years. I gave food to starving children, sir. The military personnel on that station are no longer a threat. They have agreed to surrender in exchange for continued humanitarian aid." Burke's face got even redder. "I don't care if they surrendered. You disobeyed direct orders. You wasted military resources. You violated every rule of engagement we have. Dr. Watson leaned forward. Admiral Burke, if I may. The cubs on that station were dying. In 48 hours, we would have been responsible for the deaths of over 300 children through starvation alone. Admiral Rivers found a way to achieve victory while preserving innocent lives. Innocent? They are Catherians! The enemy! There are no innocent enemies. Rivers felt his patience wearing thin. Sir, with respect, a 3-year-old cub who has never held a weapon is not my enemy. She is just a hungry child who needed help. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Burke ordering Rivers to return to Earth immediately for court-martial proceedings. Rivers accepted the orders calmly, knowing that his military career was over but feeling no regret about his choices. After the communication ended, Hayes approached with a concerned look. Sir, the crew is divided about what happened. Some of them are angry that we helped the Catherians. Others are proud of what we did. What should I tell them? Tell them the truth, Rivers replied. We chose to save lives instead of taking them. History will decide if we were right or wrong. But history was already being written across the galaxy. On the human colony world of New Terra, thousands of people gathered in the main square to watch the news coverage. Video footage showed human soldiers gently feeding Catherian cubs, and the crowd grew quiet as they watched. Maria Santos, a mother of 2 young children, wiped tears from her eyes. My brother died fighting the Catherians 3 years ago, she told the news reporter. But seeing those human soldiers help those hungry babies, I think my brother would have been proud. He always said we were fighting to protect children, not to hurt them. Similar reactions were happening on dozens of human worlds. Veterans who had lost family members in the war spoke out in support of Rivers' actions. Parents brought their own children to rallies holding signs that read, "Feed cubs, don't kill them, and mercy makes us human." But not everyone was happy. Hardline politicians and military leaders condemned Rivers as a traitor. Some called for his execution, saying that showing mercy to the enemy would only encourage more attacks on human colonies. The reaction in Catherian space was just as divided. On the Catherian homeworld, conservative military leaders met in emergency session to discuss the situation at Altara Station. General Corax, the supreme military commander, was furious with General Voss for accepting human aid. You have disgraced our entire species, Corax hissed at Voss through the communication link. Accepting help from the humans shows weakness. It makes us look like we cannot take care of our own cubs, but Voss, who was sitting in the nursery watching his daughter play with a new toy that Dr. Watson had brought her, felt no shame. My daughter is alive, he replied calmly. Yesterday she was dying and today she is laughing. If that makes me weak, then I choose to be weak. You will face judgment when you return home, Corax warned. If I return home, Voss corrected. Right now I am more interested in learning how to prevent future wars than in continuing this one. Across Catherian space, the news was causing similar debates. Many military families were quietly supportive of what had happened. They had cubs of their own, and the idea of human enemies choosing to feed them instead of kill them was difficult to ignore. On the industrial world of Kith 7, a group of Catherian civilians organized the first peace protest in their planet's history. They gathered outside the military headquarters, holding pictures of cubs and calling for an end to the war. Enough killing, said Zara, a factory worker whose mate had died in battle 2 years earlier. The humans showed mercy to our cubs. Maybe it is time for us to show mercy to theirs. Back on the human fleet, Rivers was preparing to leave for his court-martial when Dr. Watson brought him an encrypted message from an unexpected source. Sir, this came through diplomatic channels. It is from moderate leaders in the Catherian government. They want to know if you would be willing to participate in unofficial peace talks. Rivers read the message carefully. The Catherians were offering to meet on a neutral space station to discuss the possibility of a ceasefire, and they specifically requested that he be part of the human negotiating team. They say that anyone who would choose to feed enemy cubs instead of destroying them might be someone they can trust to negotiate in good faith. Dr. Watson explained. Lieutenant Cole looked up from his station. Sir, we are also getting messages from human peace groups. They want to know if they can help with your legal defense. Apparently, there are thousands of people volunteering to testify on your behalf. Rivers looked out at the Catherian station. where human and Cytherian medical teams were now working together to care for the cubs and repair the broken food systems. It was a scene that would have been impossible to imagine just a few days earlier. "Hayes, send a message to Fleet Command," Rivers said. "Tell them I will report for court-martial as ordered. But also tell them that if they want this war to end through negotiation instead of more bloodshed, they might want to reconsider their position on what happened here." As his ship prepared to leave for Earth, Rivers took one last look at the station. Through the windows of the nursery section, he could see small figures moving around. Cubs who were now healthy and active thanks to the bottles his crew had brought, instead of the bombs Fleet Command had ordered. Luna, General Voss's daughter, was probably among them, playing and laughing like children should. And somewhere in the galaxy, other parents on both sides were beginning to wonder if there might be a better way to end this war than with more death and destruction. The ripples were spreading, and there was no way to stop them now. The courtroom on Earth was packed with reporters, military officers, and civilians from across human space. Admiral Rivers sat at the defendant's table, wearing his dress uniform without the medals he had earned during 7 years of war. He had removed them himself, saying they belonged to the man he used to be. General Morrison, the prosecuting officer, stood before the military tribunal with a thick file of charges. Admiral Rivers stands accused of disobeying direct orders, providing aid to enemy forces, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. His actions have endangered human security and violated every principle of military discipline. The 3 judges, all senior admirals, listened without expression as Morrison presented his case. The evidence was clear. Rivers had directly disobeyed orders from Fleet Command and had given military supplies to the enemy. The defendant claims he was showing mercy. Morrison continued, "But mercy to our enemies is cruelty to our own people. Every Cytherian soldier we allow to live today may kill human civilians tomorrow. The defendant's sentimental attachment to enemy children has blinded him to his duty." When it was time for Rivers' defense, his lawyer, Commander Park, stood with confidence. She had volunteered for this case, giving up her comfortable position in the Judge Advocate General's office to represent the most famous defendant in military history. "Honorable judges," Park began, "Admiral Rivers did not betray humanity. He showed the galaxy what humanity truly means. The prosecution wants you to believe that feeding starving children makes us weak. I submit that it makes us stronger than any weapon we could ever build." She presented her evidence carefully. Video recordings of the cubs before and after receiving aid, medical reports showing that many would have died within hours without intervention, testimony from Dr. Watson about the humanitarian crisis on the E station. Then came the surprise witnesses. General Voss himself appeared via secure communication link from the neutral station where he was participating in ongoing peace talks. The Cytherian commander looked directly at the judges as he spoke. "I have fought against humans for many years," Voss said through the translation device. "I believed you were all cruel and heartless, interested only in conquest and destruction. Admiral Rivers proved me wrong. When he could have killed my daughter, he chose to save her instead. This act of mercy has done more to advance peace than any battle ever could." The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. Having an enemy general testify in defense of a human officer was unprecedented. But the most powerful moment came when Maria Santos, the mother from New Terra, was allowed to speak. She had traveled across the galaxy to be there, bringing her 2 young children with her. "My brother died fighting the Cytherians," she said, her voice clear and strong. "For 3 years I hated them for taking him away from us. But when I saw Admiral Rivers feeding those cubs, I remembered what my brother used to say. He said we were fighting to protect innocence, not to destroy it. Admiral Rivers did exactly what my brother would have wanted him to do." The prosecution tried to counter with testimony about military discipline and the importance of following orders, but the damage was done. The judges had seen the footage of human soldiers gently caring for alien children, and they had heard from parents on both sides who supported what Rivers had done. During the final arguments, Commander Park made her closing statement with passion. "The prosecution asks you to punish Admiral Rivers for showing mercy to children, but I ask you to consider what kind of military we want to be. Do we want to be remembered as the force that chose to kill cubs to win a war, or do we want to be remembered as the people who chose to feed them instead?" The judges deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was silent. "Admiral Rivers," the senior judge said, "you did indeed disobey direct orders from your superiors. You did provide aid to enemy forces during active combat operations. Under military law, these actions constitute serious violations of your oath as an officer." Rivers stood straight, prepared to accept his punishment. "However," the judge continued, "this tribunal also recognizes that your actions were motivated by humanitarian concerns and have resulted in significant strategic advantages for human forces. The peace talks currently taking place would not have been possible without the trust you built through your actions at Altara Station." The judge paused, looking around the packed courtroom. "It is the decision of this tribunal that Admiral Rivers will be formally reprimanded for disobeying orders, but he will retain his rank and position. Furthermore, he is hereby appointed as the human representative to the ongoing peace negotiations, with full authority to negotiate a ceasefire agreement." The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause. Rivers felt his knees go weak with relief. He was not going to prison. He was being sent back to finish what he had started. 6 months later, Rivers stood in a very different place. The neutral station where the peace talks were taking place was buzzing with activity. Human and Catherian diplomats worked side by side, hammering out the details of a comprehensive peace agreement. The war was not over yet, but the fighting had stopped in most sectors. Both sides were tired of killing, tired of losing family members, tired of seeing their children grow up afraid of the sky. Rivers walked through the station's central plaza, where a remarkable sight greeted him. Human and Catherian children were playing together in a specially designed playground. The language barrier did not seem to matter much to kids who just wanted to have fun. He spotted Luna, General Voss's daughter, playing with a human girl about her age. Luna had grown significantly since Rivers had first met her, and her scales now had a healthy shine. She saw him approaching and ran over with a big smile. "Admiral Rivers," she said in carefully practiced English. "Look what I learned." She showed him a drawing she had made of humans and Catherians standing together under a bright sun. At the bottom, she had written "friends" in both languages. Voss appeared beside his daughter, looking proud and happy. The former enemy commander had become one of Rivers' closest allies in the peace process. "She talks about you constantly," Voss said. "She tells everyone that you are the human who brought her food when she was hungry." "She has grown so much," Rivers replied, kneeling down to Luna's level. "Are you eating well now?" Luna nodded enthusiastically. "Every day, and I am learning to speak human words so I can talk to my new friends." As she ran back to play with the other children, Voss and Rivers walked to the observation deck that looked out into space. Both of their fleets were visible in the distance, but their weapons were powered down, and their crews were working together on joint missions. "Do you think this peace will last?" Voss asked. Rivers considered the question carefully. "I think it has a chance. Our children are playing together now. That is something that has never happened before. My people are still suspicious of humans," Voss admitted, "and many of your people still hate Catherians. It will not be easy." "No," Rivers agreed. "But Luna is not suspicious of human children, and the human kids playing with her don't see an enemy when they look at her. They see a friend who likes the same games they do." In his pocket, Rivers carried 2 pictures now. One was the old photo of Amy, smiling and holding her toy spaceship. The other was a new picture taken just last week, showing Luna and her human friends laughing together in the playground. Both pictures reminded him of the same thing. Children were children, no matter what species they belonged to. They all wanted to be fed when they were hungry, comforted when they were scared, and loved by the adults who took care of them. The peace treaty would be signed next month, officially ending 7 years of war between humans and Catherians. There would be challenges ahead, disagreements and setbacks, and people on both sides who wanted to return to fighting. But every time Rivers looked at the children playing together in the plaza, he felt hopeful about the future. Luna and her friends would grow up knowing that humans and Catherians could be allies instead of enemies. They would remember the stories of the war, but they would also remember the day when a human admiral chose to bring bottles instead of blades. And maybe, when they became leaders themselves, they would remember to choose mercy over revenge, understanding over hatred, and life over death. The stars looked different now, Rivers thought as he watched ships from both fleets working together in the distance. They looked like places where children of different species might one day travel together, exploring and learning and building a future that neither humans nor Catherians could create alone. It was a better future than anyone had imagined when the war began. And it had all started with one simple decision to feed hungry cubs instead of letting them starve. Sometimes the most important battles were won, not with weapons, but with compassion. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from defeating your enemies, but from discovering that they were not really your enemies at all.